and what happened at their game with Wisconsin yesterday. It was a mess, to say the least. I've got some comments that we're going to play from Juwan Howard and from the coach from Wisconsin. Either way, it's all a mess. That's pretty much the best way to look at it. Anyway, I thought we'd start, though, with the SEC from the weekend. We could talk about the baseball series. The Clemson Tigers walloped Indiana over the weekend, winning 3 straight from them. Maybe this is the season the Tigers finally get it together. I don't know. It seemed like they won some games that it seemed like last season they were just in spots where they could lose. But I tell you what, I'm confident for the Tigers on Friday nights with their Friday night starter. He's getting the job done. But we can definitely talk about the Clemson series. I've got a rundown on some SEC stuff we can get into. Gamecocks take 2 of 3 from UNC Greensboro and needed extra innings yesterday to get it done. But, you can chalk that up with, hey, it's the start of the season. All right, so we'll get into all of that this afternoon here on the Rundown. Here on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Of course, we're taking calls. WWE's in town tonight. And I'm heading to the show this evening. Going to watch some actual WWE Raw. Brock Lesnar and all those folks are going to be there tonight. And it's not like the wrestling that I grew up with. I admit that. But still going to be an interesting show. I'm sure there'll be plenty of people at the Colonial Life Arena tonight to watch the WWE. I'm kind of looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a good show, I believe. I'm a big guy on I love the main event style stuff, but I love the undercard too, man. The guys that are just trying to get there and get with it. Still love that stuff. So looking forward to the WWE. Anyway, let's look at some stuff for the weekend for baseball. You look back at the weekend, and one team that impressed me was LSU. They out-hit Maine like 51-15. That was kind of the gist of it there for that set. And they're going to try to hit the ball a lot. That LSU team really making it look interesting at the plate because they can definitely get after it. So, yeah, they were probably one of the more impressive teams from over the weekend. We've also got on the other side of the baseball front here, I don't know what's going on with the Florida Gators. They won 7-2 on Friday over Liberty. And then the Flames came back on Saturday and Sunday, winning 2 close games. So Florida, a team that I think they're trying to screw over my prediction that 5 SEC teams would be in the mix for the College World Series. Yeah, I'm looking at that now, and it's like, okay, you guys are supposed to be one of those teams that are in the mix, kind of helping out the numbers a little bit, and they're not. They're really not. So with that, I don't know what's going on with Florida. It could be that it's just a weekend thing. We shall see. We shall see with the Gators. It's one of those wait and see type things, It's kind of where we're at on that. 803-978-1832. 803-978-1832. That is the number to dial if you'd like to join us here on the Rundown this afternoon. If you want to talk about any of that from this weekend. I don't get into NASCAR, but there were some angry people that Bubba Wallace finished second yesterday. It's like they want him to fail. I don't understand that. I mean, we could talk about that as well. But I got to talk a minute about Juwan Howard and the silliness from yesterday's game. Before we do that, let's go to the phones. 803-978-1832. And welcome into the Rundown. Good afternoon.
Hey, it's Big Barney Ross here. I want to talk about what transpired over the weekend. It looks like NASCAR's got soft on us. They're doing 3 stages on a Daytona. What in the world has happened to sports? And college basketball turned out to be hockey. And I love hockey. I love going down to Nashville, watching the Predators play and throw catfish on the ice. I don't want to watch Juwan Howard catfish an assistant coach. Do you have any idea? When I was growing up, NASCAR was a sport of men. You know, they would smoke the Winston. You know, they looked like they'd gargle hot asphalt. Now,
Exactly.
they got makeup crews following them around, you know. What has happened to our beloved sports? If you're going to do that, I want 3 stages of nitrous, 1 per stage, you know. I want Dodge to get in there and let them run the car for, you know, let Dodge in there, Mopar. You know, if you're going to just, you imagine how many shims would have fell out in the 70s if they had to give him 3 chances to line up again, you know. Big Barney Ross, y'all think about that. I'm out of here.
Appreciate it, man. Look, Big Barney Ross is correct. NASCAR now is tough to watch. It's tough to watch because the drivers that, and I sound like I'm the old man yelling at the sky here, but growing up, guys like Rusty Wallace and Richard Petty and guys like that, they would beat the snot out of some of these guys. But yeah, we'll get into that momentarily. But let's talk about Juwan Howard. Here's the big thing with that. In case you missed it yesterday, Juwan Howard had something going. Basically, he got upset about a timeout being called with Wisconsin, and some bad things happened. And I'm going to give you the call on that here. This was one of the final calls for the game here. Check this out as things got silly with Juwan Howard.
You've got a dust-up right now. Juwan Howard and Greg Gard were going nose to nose, and now we got a problem. We got pushing and shoving. We got a lot of chirping. We got a wrestling match going on, and Jacoby Neath being pulled away by Carter Higginbottom. Adam Smith, graduate assistant for the Wisconsin Badgers, pushing off a couple of players.
Yeah, there were some punches thrown in there.
As it got nasty there in the end, and everybody being separated, you got to be really careful here. Tyler Wall getting guys away. You got to be careful here. Richard, big fella, getting out there. He's telling his guys, get off the floor.
Good job by Richard.
Good job, big fella.
All right, so let's get some comments here from Coach Gard. Here's what he said with his little with his post-game interview right there on the floor.
Apparently, he didn't like that I called the timeout to reset the 10-second call because we only had 4 seconds to get the ball over half court. And I didn't want to put my backups. I had all my bench guys in the game. I didn't want to put them in that position of scrambling with only 4 seconds. So I took a timeout, and it got us a new 10 seconds and helped them, get organized to get the ball in. And he did not like that when he came through the handshake line. So I'll leave it at that, and the tape will show the rest.
All right, so that's what Coach Gard said. Now, Juwan Howard was asked about it in his post-game press conference. And here's the exchange that he had with the reporters, which doesn't make him look very good. But check this out.
What happens between being upset about a timeout being called and raising it to a point where it looked like you hit another coach in the face? What kind of happens in between to make that happen?
Well, basically, I addressed with the head coach that I will remember that because of that timeout. And for someone to touch me, and I think that was very uncalled for him to touch me as we were verbalizing and communicating with one another. So that's what ended up happening, and that's what escalated it.
Right here.
Yeah, I guess if you could, expand on that a little more. What?
No, I would not expand on it. I'll just share with you the story, what happened.
Well, as far as touching, it's obvious touching with the handshake line there. It must have been more than that.
Oh, yeah, it was more than that. Yeah. Touching me unnecessary wasn't cause for that when we were talking. And at that point, I thought that was time to protect myself.
All right, a couple of things on that. First of all, if you go back and you look at the tape, I didn't see anything that was completely out of line as far as this guy touched me here. I mean, was the guy, did he grab you or what did he do? You got in each other's face over some silliness stuff, okay? But here's the other end of it. I didn't see anything where Coach Gard did anything that was out of line. Now, on the other hand, what they're arguing about or what Juwan Howard is upset about is stupid to the 15th level. Here's a thought. if you don't like the fact that coaches are calling timeouts, because people seem to forget that Wisconsin hammered them yesterday. They won by 14 points? And Michigan is 14-11 on the season. They're not a very good basketball team. Juwan Howard is looking at anything to try to get something to spark his team, I guess. But the idea of I'm going to be upset and I'm going to say something to a coach for calling a timeout at the end of a game, it's just stupid. This is big-time college basketball. You're playing in the Big Ten, one of the best basketball conferences in the country. Okay? Let's slow down for just a second and think about that. This is not Little League. This is not my buddy Dennis Wilson out there coaching some 12-year-old kids. It's not like that. This is big-time basketball. And if you don't want a coach calling a timeout about that, here's a thought. Win some games. Be better on that front. I don't understand why he's upset, first of all. That's the one thing. And the other thing, too, is you think people aren't watching you? There were several different angles that I was able to obtain with a simple Google search. Okay? So I could watch different angles of this quote-unquote fight that happened. And I tell you what, it didn't look like the guy was doing anything silly. Did not do it. Edwin Reeves off the top ropes. If Howard wants to punch somebody over a timeout, why not punch Chris Webber? That's solid. So the question comes down to this. Should Juwan Howard be fired or at least suspended? There are folks that are calling for him to be suspended. Tom Izzo up at Michigan State said it reminded him of the malice at the palace. I don't know if it's that far. You didn't have guys jumping into the stands trying to take out fans. I didn't see any of that, okay? I'm not taking up for what Juwan Howard did. That's not, let's make sure that we're all on the same page with that. That's not my thinking here. But I think that there has to be some repercussions. If you remember, there was a game with Maryland last year where he got into it with the Maryland coach. So he has a record of running his mouth and getting upset with coaches. Me, on the other hand, I think it's down to a point now where he needs to be sit down a little bit. Someone at Michigan needs to tell him, you're supposed to be guiding these young men and teaching them the finer art of being a gentleman. That Michigan M is supposed to mean something. He needs to be retaught that. More of the rundown we come back. This is Fox Sports Radio 1400. Yeah, that's a great line there, Edwin. That's funny. Kind of a punk move, man. You don't have to do that. Now, I think there should be on the other end of it, though. The next time they play them, if they get up big, run the score up. It's kind of the way to go there, but I don't understand why, just silly, man. I got a great tweet I'm going to read you here. This is actually funny. Welcome into the show there, Bible Belt. Sparta, we'll talk with you today too, man, about Juwan Howard if you're into that. My Sprite exploded on me. Sprite Zero, the drink of champions. That's a valid point, too. Why hit him? I don't understand that either. Welcome back to the Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400, brought to you by Mazda of Columbia. MazdaofColumbia.com. Go and buy yourself a car. You know you want a car. Stop driving that bucket of bolts. Get yourself a new car. All right. Anyway, some comments from some folks. Seth Davis put out there, guard should not have called the timeout, which I think is stupid. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Guard should not have put his hands on Howard. Krabenhoft, the assistant, should not have escalated. Howard throwing a slap punch was inexcusable and calls for severe repercussions. Look, B. Bean says Juwan must be fired to verify that violence cannot be tolerated. I don't know if we should throw him completely to the wolves and say, all right, he should be completely out of there. But a suspension, there was a coach that yelled at some refs in a tunnel a couple of years ago, and he got a 2-game suspension. Juwan Howard should be in the same mix. Go ahead and suspend him for the rest of the season. I mean, the team's in the toilet anyway. Finish that season out and make him apologize. Do some community service work, whatever, and make that the way to go. Desmond Howard, who is the words that I want to use with Desmond Howard. This guy is the epitome of anything with Michigan did is fine. I mean, he is a homer to the 18th millennium. Said, I saw Juwan walking away and Wisconsin coach put his hands on him to stop. First mistake. Then assistant coach inserted himself and said something that only escalated things. Let bosses be bosses and play your position. Sir, I don't care what planet you're on. If someone comes up to you and you're in a professional standpoint and you're making millions of dollars each year to coach a program, and Juwan Howard's traveled the planet too, by the way, played in the NBA forever. There shouldn't be this whole thing of, okay, you touch me, so now I get to slap the hell out of you. That's not the way to do it. You're paid enough money that you can walk away. And this guy, Desmond Howard, Juwan Howard could have beaten this guy senseless, and Desmond Howard would probably still defend him. Would have probably still defended him. Another good comment from B. Bean. Each of us has walked away from a fight. It is a sign of maturity. Yeah, I don't want to fight with anybody. You fight when it's the absolute last resort. You're not in a last resort when you're surrounded by big, huge behemoth basketball players anyway, and there's security and everything else there. Just walk away. Walk away. That's what should have happened. Aaron Torres on Twitter said, a random thought, how many schools wish their coach slapped someone like Juwan Howard did so they can fake outrage, fire them with cause, and not have to pay a buyout? You know, Georgia's AD is going to bed tonight praying that Tom Crean smacks someone these next couple of games. Let's go out to the phones. And welcome into the Rundown. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hey, man, turn down your radio, and what do you got for the show?
Yeah, I know the rules.
Okay. What you got for the show?
NASCAR, Daytona 500, great race.
You liked it, huh?
I loved it.
Do you have
500 miles there.
do you have like all the NASCAR gear? Do you have like your own fire suit you sit and watch the show in, or what?
Hey, yes, sir.
Do you have a driver? Because it seems like everybody that watches NASCAR has a driver. Who's your driver?
Chase Elliott.
Chase Elliott.
Tim.
That's fair.
Finish Tim.
Okay.
I think it was a great race.
It was a great race.
Wallace did great.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised he was up there, but he did it.
He's got the funding from Michael Jordan and everything else. So the only thing keeping him from succeeding is himself, in my opinion.
That's right.
Because in NASCAR, it comes down to, do you have a good owner? And Michael Jordan's putting the money in there and saying, go win a championship. So the only thing stopping him is him.
The last 2 restricted freight races, he finished first and second. Won down at Talladega and finished second at Daytona.
There you go.
Who won't like it? Eat the heart out.
He can drive a car. He can turn left.
He can drive. It shows. No doubt.
All right, man. I appreciate it.
And lay off my Florida Gators.
Man,
Baseball gonna be okay.
They went
but
1-2.
One thing I didn't hear you say nothing about. You didn't say nothing about Florida against Auburn and basketball this weekend.
I haven't gotten to my basketball talk yet, sir. Stay tuned.
I will.
Thank you.
Give me some props.
All right, I got you.
All right.
All right. My goodness. All right, Hollywood, a fan of NASCAR. Apparently, he just said he's got his own flame suit that he sits in and watches the race. Okay. 803-978-1832. Should Juwan Howard be fired? Or should they be in the mix of suspending him for the rest of the season? He should at least apologize. My goodness. Should be putting your hands on anybody. And I'm not siding with Coach Guard here either. You know, if he put his hands on him, he should take some time off too. He really should. All right, 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. That is the number to dial if you'd like to join us here on the rundown. Quick thing with Clemson basketball. You know, the more and more you watch, the more and more it's like, are things going to change up there? And I'm at the point now where when you watch this stuff, you kind of know what's going to happen. It just seems like the season is just lost. Now, when you look at the good Clemson teams that they had under Brownell, they had teams that they could do a little bit with the guard play. Guards on this team aren't very good. The best player on the team is P.J. Hall. And it seems like it's just not enough. And there's several folks talking about, all right, who could replace him? I think in basketball, you need a system. And right now, with the Clemson's ability to draw top-level talent, I think the idea needs to be in a system sort of like what Shaka Smart does. I know he's at Marquette, and I know that people are thinking, all right, Rob, that's kind of a pipe dream for Clemson fans to think that Shaka Smart would leave Marquette and go to Clemson. Yeah, I get that. But I'm in the adage of have a system. And the system that he has requires the least amount of talent to squeeze out wins. Now, what do I mean by that? His system is simple. You're going to press people till the end of time. You have guys that are very athletic and very long players that can cover up lots of the passing lane. And you teach everyone to basically shoot layups, and everything runs in transition. It's running. Now, that's not something that's going to win you an NCAA championship. It's not. But what it can do is get you to a point where you're respectable enough and you're not going out and losing games like this and the way that Clemson played this weekend. Yeah, you're not going to have that. You're going to win some of those games, and then you might be able to attract some players. So getting a guy that's like Shaka Smart could be the way to go. A guy that has a system that doesn't really require you to have the best recruits. It's kind of what you got to think about. Oliver Purnell did basically the same thing. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. Bible Belt says Clemson should hire Greg Buckner as their basketball coach. Jetmex says, I heard Comrade Saban has added Z to come talk to the team before practice starts. Motivate the Bolsheviks. Okay, sir. That's actually really funny. Look, when it comes to it, though, I don't think Clemson's going anywhere. I think they're going to stay with who they got as far as their head coach. I mean, I don't think they're going to change anything, but we shall see. 803-978-1832. We will take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have more for you. This is The Rundown. You're listening to Fox Sports Radio 1400. Oliver Purnell didn't really have any basketball players that were of high regard. They were pretty good, but they weren't like, break down the world great. Well, welcome back to The Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. I'm Rob Sanders. Thanks for joining us today. Some other basketball notes. Florida got a win over Auburn. Auburn's dropped 2 straight. The Florida Gators, though, trying to manipulate themselves into a tournament run. We'll see how that works out. South Carolina got a win over an LSU team that they'd had their best player basically come back from injury, and they've been playing some pretty good basketball. They'd won like 5 straight. South Carolina's won 3 straight. 3 straight SEC games now? And they're starting to claw themselves out of the hole that they put themselves in the early part of the season. They've got a game with Mississippi State, Mizzou. Those are the last 2 home games. And then they've got 2 games in the state of Alabama with Alabama and Auburn. So Gamecock basketball team making some moves there, doing a little something as they get themselves squared away for trying to make a postseason run. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. We're talking about, of course, if you want to get in on the Juwan Howard discussion, should he be fired? We can talk about that. Talk about baseball from the weekend. Some other notes from the baseball stuff. We talked about the stuff with the Gators, but it seemed like Tennessee played some good baseball. They swept Georgia Southern, scored 33 runs, held them to 3 runs on 13 hits for the 3-game series. So they outscored them 33-3. I mean, that's pretty impressive. So a good run, good setup there. Arkansas was one of the most dominant teams in college baseball last season. They won their series and held Illinois State to 6 runs in 3 games. That sounds good, but the series was competitive throughout. They did win 2 out of the 3, but the SEC is not holding up their end of the bargain. I thought that we'd have sweeps across the board this weekend. Yeah, not so much. Not so much at all. Auburn won 2 of their 3 games from their Texas trip, beating Kansas State 12-1 on Sunday and knocking off Texas Tech on Saturday. They lost to Oklahoma 3-0, but Auburn playing some pretty good baseball too. And, we joke about, or we don't really joke about it. We talk about the fact that I think that there's a big section of folks that are like the SEC invented college football, when that's not necessarily true. There's 2 teams and that's about it. But you can make an argument that there's 5 teams that are really, really legitimately have a great shot of getting to the College World Series. So, yeah, good stuff there from the SEC over the weekend. I thought there'd be more sweeps, but not so much. Ole Miss did pretty good themselves. They swept Charleston Southern. I mentioned LSU. They outscored Maine 51-15 in their opening series. Woof. That is a ton of runs. All right, taking your calls at 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. That is the number to call if you'd like to join us here on the Rundown, here on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Of course, around the world on the iHeartRadio app. As we roll along here on the Rundown this afternoon, you can join the program. It's very simple. Give us a call at 803-978-1832. President's Day edition of the Rundown. I'm heading to WWE tonight. I want to talk a little bit about that WWE match. We can talk about that too. They had the pay-per-view in Saudi Arabia on, what was it, Saturday? And those guys are flying back to perform here tonight. Oof, wow. That's a stretch. So we can talk about wrestling as well. 803-978-1832. It's kind of I know President's Day seems kind of, it's like a lot of folks are off today, but there was some big stuff from over the weekend. I tell you what, the NBA All-Star Game used to be like a must-watch thing when I was a kid. I read the final score last night, and this is not a typo, 163-160. Think about that for a second. 323 combined points. There was absolutely no defense played in the All-Star Game last night, and it's just not worth watching. I mean, I think it's become more of just an exhibition anyway, but man, the All-Star games are just in the toilet. I still think the best one's Major League Baseball. The rest of them are just not good. Could not watch it last night. It was just hurting that bad. All right, 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. That's the number to dial if you'd like to join us here on the Rundown. You're on Fox Sports Radio 1400, of course, around the world on the iHeartRadio app. Lots of things that we can get into today, including what we talked about with Juwan Howard and how it's just not looking very good for him right now. I wonder how long they're going to let this sit and stew, because now the ball's in Michigan's court and they have to figure out, are they going to punish him or are they not? We shall see. By the way, Tom Crean had some issues. The headline, Tom Crean caught criticizing a player, blaming Georgia for recent news leak during a Zoom mishap. The Crean thought the call was over, the Zoom call was over, but the feed was still live, and he called out a graduate assistant for leaking the news that assistant coach Wade Mason's suspension. He said, there's no question we're concerned in there that our GA really, is what he said. Rashawn exposed it. He'd had to have it organized, man. Somebody organized the whole thing. Somebody has. There ain't no way that guy got some of the players' numbers. Well, we just got to keep figuring out what we're going to do next. Also, during the hot mic situation, he criticized transfer guard Aaron Cook, saying he's not as good as he thinks he is. Aaron's not close to being as good as he thinks he is. And every time there's a problem, he wears down. Like I said, if you played with as much edge as you're talking to me right now, you wouldn't be having any issues at all. But I've said, but you're not going to talk like that, okay? You can go play like that, but you're not going to talk like that. So apparently, this guy, it's like, sands through the hourglass. These are the days of our lives. That's basically what's happening right now with the situation with Tom Crean. I do agree that they maybe want him to slap somebody so they can fire him with calls. So, yeah, not good news on that front for Georgia basketball. 803-978-1832. Big Barney Ross says, Howard, he ain't no coward. Okay. Silly season is still popping. Matt Luke steps down as OL coach today. Yeah, I did read about that. Coaches just coming and going, man. It has to be hard on the recruiting front because you send these guys out, and I think Brent Venables was taking recruiting calls up through Friday, and he was announced the head coach on Sunday for Oklahoma. I use that as an example. I'm not popping Brent Venables. He's just the example that I'm using. But a lot of times these guys could be interviewing for jobs and they're still working for you. And I think the recruiting trail is going to get more and more interesting. Also, one other thing that we'll get to when we come back, there are some Clemson fans that have been saying some silly stuff online about Clemson and offensive line and using the transfer portal. We'll talk about that when we come back because there are some lies with the transfer portal. Imagine that. Imagine that. We'll get into that when we come back here on the rundown. Of course, you're free to call the program 803-978-1832. Lawton Swan of Clemson Sports Talk comes up after I'm done here in about 17 minutes. But be sure to check out his program as he will sing the praises of just about everyone. Lawton loves America, and he loves you for listening. 803-978-1832 is the number to dial if you'd like to join us here on the rundown. By the way, the new top 25 is out. And my notes are all messed up on it. That's how that works today. Your number one team in the country is Gonzaga, followed by Arizona, and Auburn checks in at number 3, even though they've lost 2 straight games. Purdue's number 4. Kansas is at number 5. Kentucky's at 6. Duke is at 7. And Villanova is number 8. So starting to shake up a little bit here. Starting to shake up here a little bit. All right, quick break. We come back. We'll have more for you here on the rundown. This is Fox Sports Radio 1400. Georgia fans invented silly. I don't know what you're talking about. Wait, what? I think he was out of timeouts, but I get where you're coming from. Good point, sir. Good point. Welcome back to the rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. Give us a call, 803-978-1832. Here's some interesting stuff for you. There's a section of Clemson fans that think that Dabo Swinney should hit the transfer portal for some offensive linemen. I hate to break it to Clemson fans that think that the transfer portal is the place to go for that. Here are the schools that offer or that have players that are in the transfer portal that are interior offensive linemen. Now, they could be guards, they could be centers. Here are the schools. Western Kentucky, Vanderbilt, as far as the top-rated players. Tulsa, Middle Tennessee. So those are the top guys that are in the transfer portal as of right now that are your big-time offensive linemen. Clemson fans are upset that Dabo Swinney's not going to do that and go and get some of those guys. Why would the numbers say, why do that? When the offensive linemen are basically that you have are rated higher than anyone that's in the transfer portal. It's not somebody that's going to help you. Now, has Dabo Swinney been, the way that he's acted about the transfer portal hasn't been exactly the best. But in the end, the reality is that offensive linemen, for the most part, don't really hit the transfer portal. And if they do, they're not there long. They're really not. Not guys that can play at a high Power 5 level. You don't see a bunch of those getting into the transfer portal. It's just not there. So Clemson fans should take a step back for a second. And the best way to build an offensive line, you can't use the Brad Brownell method of I'm just going to go and try to get other folks and see that were developed by somebody else. No. The best way to develop an offensive line is to get them out of high school, bring them in, and coach them up in the way that you want them to be. Katuza says, when did Dabo start using the portal? He got a quarterback from Northwestern in the portal. He did offer a center that went to Michigan. But to think that you can just go into the portal and get a guy that's going to just automatically be right there in the mix, and he's going to be the guy that is going to fix your offensive line woes, it's kind of silly. It's kind of silly. 803-978-1832. It's almost like a point now where you need a balance. You got to have a balance of, can there be someone in the transfer portal right now that can help the program? When we look at the transfer portal and we look at all the players, the best players in the transfer portal as of right now, running back Jamias Griffin, who's looking to transfer out of Georgia Tech. You've got a safety in Wesley Walker, another Georgia Tech guy. Man, what in the world's going on with this? All these Georgia Tech folks leaving the program. Michael Lockhart, the defensive lineman, leaving. Maybe something's going on there we don't know about. Jordan Dominic, another edge rusher, leaving the program. That's what, 1, 2, 3, 4 Georgia Tech players since the 18th are leaving the program. But a lot of these guys aren't really in the mix as far as being able to compete at a high level. Jaden Daniels, the talented quarterback from Arizona State, he's trying to transfer somewhere else. Some of the other linemen, other players that are in the mix there, when you stop and look at it, a lot of these guys I haven't heard of. Jonathan King is an edge rusher from Indiana that might be doing something. Big Barney Ross with a great point there. For the low price of $250,000, you too can own the transfer portal. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. When I look at the transfer portal, I see a lot of guys that were rated high. Some of them were rated high, but they couldn't make it work where they were. And to think they can just come in and just play is kind of silly. Good point there. Texas A&M didn't have any problems with the transfer portal. Well, the teams that are using the transfer portal the best, in my opinion, Alabama's doing a great job. Nick Saban goes and gets guys that fill the hole quickly. I think getting Burton is going to help out their offense next season. I really do. You got Toto, what was the last season, to be a linebacker for him. So there are teams that are doing a good job with the transfer portal, but there are teams that aren't. They really aren't. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. That's the number to dial if you'd like to join us here on the Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Of course, around the world on the iHeartRadio app. As we roll through President's Day here on the program, you're welcome to join the program, and we can talk a little bit about the WWE. I'm heading to that. Once my day here ends at iHeart, I'll head down to the Colonial Center and watch some WWE wrestling tonight. So looking forward to that. Also looking forward to a big week of college baseball. I think Clemson plays the College of Charleston this week. That's pretty good. B. Bean says, when will Dabo believe in the transfer portal? 2025? I think when he sees other programs. Think about this for a second. When's the last big transfer guy that you can really say, all right, they came in and made a huge difference? Yeah, you've had a couple, but not anything that was program changing. So I think that he's going to have to see more examples of it working. I think he likes the idea of I recruited these kids at 16, 17. I get them into the program, and they do great stuff for us. I think that's what Dabo Swinney's looking for. All right. So throughout the week on the program, we'll do some college baseball. We'll have more college basketball discussion. We'll start looking ahead to some spring games, even though they're about a month out. Spring practice is coming upon us quickly. So we'll be talking about that as well as we roll along here on the Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Rob Sounds Good. As Jay wants to know if I collect those game-worn wrestling thongs. No, sir. See, I think Jay was upset because he didn't enjoy wrestling as a kid. I think maybe his parents were like, that's a little bit too harsh for you, Jay. You go and play in your coloring books. You don't get to watch the great Ric Flair or Hulk Hogan or Andre the Giant. That's a little bit too much for your sensitive eyes, sir. I think that's what's wrong with Jay. That's why he gives me grief about the whole wrestling thing. I'm cool with that. Big Barney Ross says Kentucky's basketball team reminds him of the Durham Bulls. Look, Kentucky's got a great team. They may get a number 1 seed. They may. Who knows? So there are lots of questions left. This is like one of the best parts about basketball season is right now because it's kind of moving day. You had your non-conference schedule. The majority of your conference schedule is out of the way now. We have our cut of, all right, there's, they say there's 68 teams, but in reality, there's 36 teams that are going to make the tournament. You got 32 qualifiers, but there's 36 spots. There's probably 50 teams looking for those 36 spots. It's one of the best times of the year. So looking forward to doing some more basketball coverage as we roll along here on the Rundown. Big Barney Ross said he wanted to grow up sounding like Dusty Rhodes. I can't even do a good Dusty Rhodes impression, but Dusty Rhodes was great. You're right about that. I won't be seeing Dusty Rhodes tonight. That sucks. Dusty Rhodes was great, though. All right, appreciate you joining us here on President's Day. We'll be back at it tomorrow here on the Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400.